Chapter 5. I Decide. Visit to Ashram. The decision to stay at Tiruvannamalai, and certainly the decision to make it and not Bombay my home, was not an easy or quick one. During my second visit to the ashram, I stayed for about 3 or 4 months and took up residence in the house of my friend Mr. Bose. Years earlier, I had met him at Sri K.F. Nariman's in Bombay, and Mr. Bose had sought my help in some of his ventures. During his frequent visit to Bombay on these affairs, he used to be my guest. I would go to the old hall to sit in Bhagavan's presence to enjoy the deep, ineffable peace radiating from him. I noticed that his powerful, bright and shining body sometimes seemed to tremble a bit and then become immobile and motionless as if he was in deep samadhi. When he emerged from it, the same trembling motion would be noticed. I felt that the greatest power on earth was not with its kings and statesmen, but with this man here, and whose only earthly possessions were the bamboo staff and a kamandalu lying beside him on the floor and his loin cloth. This man had plunged into his inmost depths to find and be the truth that we are, which men of giant intellect may try to explain in learned ways. His love and humility were truly heroic. Utterly unassuming, he never tolerated any fuss being made about him. Gentle yet firm, his calm could never be disturbed. Pure in heart and mind, having realized the self of all, there was no guru or sishya for him. He had an equal regard for one and all. Sitting in the presence of such a man, thoughts of the fugitiveness and the vanity of life as I had known, lived and suffered would pass across my mind. I felt that one and one thing alone was worth thirsting after in life, that was to know who the I we always refer to in all our thoughts, words and actions is. For my deep conviction was that it was absolutely essential to obtain the grace of the Guru. Wealth, relation, status did not count in the least. I remember that the Lord Buddha disowned his son, wife and relations as also his kingdom, and Sri Ramakrishna claimed no relations as his. When Bhagavan's mother came to him up on the hill and claimed to be his mother, Bhagavan pointed out all the ladies sitting before him and said they were all his mothers too. Sri Naina. My appetite to know more of Bhagavan was considerably whetted by Sri Naina, whom I met on my first visit and with whom I established a great bond to last our life almost the moment I saw him. He and Vishwanatha Swami would spend the evenings with me at Mr. Bose's place and regale me with the stories of their experiences and of the life of Bhagavan, which held me spellbound. Visions I saw on the Arunachala. One such evening I saw on the hill Arunachala opposite to me a vision of a blood-colored heart in the spinning brilliant Jupiter against the background of the hill, which made me think of my birth star Jupiter. This vision escaped Naina, and when I called his attention to it, he tried to brush it off, saying it must be some fires lit by the woodcutters on the hill. I could hardly believe that such brilliance, which was quite stationary and immobile, could proceed from any man-made fire. Fascinated by this vision from about 8 p.m. till 3 a.m. that night, tired, I slept away, and then I had a dream. The sky before me opened, a flower-decked swing appeared out of it with the Lord Shiva seated on it, the tiger skin around the waist and the hooded cobra around the neck. Swinging thrice, the Lord placed his feet on my forehead, and on the third movement, when I asked who he was, he said he was Lord Shiva. The dream passed. That morning when I was in the old hall, I had the sensation that Bhagavan was looking at me curiously, obliquely, from out of the corner of his eye, as if to say he was aware of my experience the previous night. Thoughts of the days spent in Bodh Gaya and my experiences there would, however, often cross my mind. I had always a strong feeling that I must be grateful and faithful to all who had helped me even in the least, and more so if one desired to progress on the spiritual path. I suffered many mental misgivings. If after the experience of grace showered on me by the Lord Buddha, was I right to go over to Sri Ramana? Such thoughts were to assail my ears later with Sri Ma Mayi too. There were times when the excellent food my cook had prepared seemed tasteless and insipid and would be rejected. It was not long that this perplexity assailed me. It pleased Lord Buddha and Sri Ramana to tell me in no uncertain terms that there is not an iota of difference between them and that they were one. Maybe about 1 a.m. or 2, while asleep in my room in Mr. Bose's house, I dreamt I was quite alone with Bhagavan in the old hall with my eyes closed in meditation. Bhagavan was leaning on his couch against the side pillow from which appeared a brilliant star throwing a soft heavenly light on me. The light disappeared and I saw Lord Buddha dressed like a king with all the kingly regalia and the jewellery with the tiara on his head and seated where Bhagavan was. In a few seconds the figure disappeared and the figure of Sri Ramana emerged. What great assurance need I seek to make up my mind that I should make a second home here in Tiruvannamalai and spend a few winter months every year here. I told Nayana of this dream. I did not tell him of the earlier one as he seemed to not inclined to believe the vision of the heart-shaped light I saw on the hill. As usual with him, Nayana repeated this dream to Bhagavan when he met him alone in the Palakottu that day. Bhagavan seemed to have remarked, Oh, let her get along, as if in approval. Mr. Bose had already offered to let me reside in one of the houses in his compound whenever I chose to come to Tiruvannamalai. He had framed a set of 32 rules for the guidance of the residents of his compound, one of which at any rate I broke quite regularly every day, when Nayana and Vishwanath Swami would spend long hours in the evening till 9 p.m. or even later talking about Bhagavan and other spiritual matters. I looked to Nayana as a father for guidance in a strange land where I was alien to the language, manners and the customs. Told of this breach, Mr. Bose naturally tried to remonstrate gently with me, which made me resolve to find myself another residence, even if it were a little distant from the ashram. When I informed Nayana of my decision, he generously offered to let me have his plot of land on which my house now stands, and the plans were drawn up for a mud hut. I really wanted to live in one at a cost of about rupees 300. The menace of rats, I dread them, infesting the mud hut held out by Nayana, made me decide in favor of a pakka construction. Bhagavan permits my stay. It was said that Bhagavan would not permit a married woman to live away from her family and home, and that he would not view with favor the idea of my building a residence for myself. I was very happy that day when he asked me as I entered the old hall, So, you are going to build yourself a house here? To express his approval of my plans, I had gone to Bombay. His Highness, the Maharaja of Dhurampur, invited me to his place. As soon as I went, the first thing he did was to take me to his prayer room. As soon as I entered and sat down, I saw a beautiful photo of Mother Parvati. I could not take my eyes off that picture. It seemed alive. As I sat for a long time, the photo actually entered into me. I told Maharaj that strangely enough this picture has taken my heart. He simply smiled and said, Yes, you are right. It is alive and performing miracles in my life. After some time I informed him that I was leaving for my ashram. So surprisingly he came to the Boribandar station with his staff with a big wooden box parcel. I asked him, What is this? He said, When you open it, you will know. On my return here, I opened the box and to my greatest happiness, I saw the wonderful mother's picture, an exact copy, just one thing. His Highness was very big and this smaller. Immediately I took it up to my meditation room. I had a Mohammedan woman servant. She was always against my sadhana. As you know, Mohammedans never liked this sort of worship. She always spoke against this picture and others. Many a time I rebuked her, almost threatened her, but to no avail. One night she was as usual sleeping near the upstairs. Suddenly she heard a noise, and what she saw was that same mother from the picture came out and take her hand and put it on my bed and smile and disappear. She could not sleep after that. Next morning she seemed dazed and behaved strangely. I asked her why she would not say anything. In the afternoon she came and told me what had happened. Then I told her, "Now you see, these are not pictures, but they are more true than we are." After that she was changed. Daily she would go up and clean my prayer table and put any amount of flowers. Not only she, but 2 or 3 others also had such experiences with this great picture. Bhagavan approves. I may relate here an incident which may be quite relevant to the events narrated. My way of life and attitude to it, the yearnings of my heart were in dissonance with that of all my relations. I was quite alone in my family to tread the path I did, the rest of them going the worldly way and holding me to ridicule for what I chose to do. Although they just tolerated me, once I was the recipient of a stinker from one of my sisters, who at least I thought should have a greater appreciation for my ways. I took that letter to Bhagavan, who remarked that if one member of a family chose to tread the path of spirituality, by that very act the rest of the family would derive immense benefit and be protected from evil. I informed my sister that far from railing at me for my ways, they had every reason to thank me as they are protected from unknown and unseen dangers. Foundation on Good Friday. The foundation stone was laid at my house one day, and as instructed by Naina, I took on a plate coconut, fruit and flowers as offering to Bhagavan. My feeling at what then happened differ words to describe. Gracious Bhagavan, with his charming smile in his ever gentle soft voice, asked me, "Do you know today is Good Friday?" I was not aware of it. I felt I had the blessings of not only Lord Buddha and Sri Ramana, but of Jesus Christ also in building my house. I am not in the least fanciful in making this statement. Friends, guests, visitors and servants of all communities, nations and religions have had visions of Bhagavan in my residence and have told me so. My only regret is that I did not request Bhagavan to set his blessed feet in my residence. He would not have refused that request had I made it, but Bhagavan in his infinite grace has made me up for my lack. I know and I feel Bhagavan's presence always with me in my residence, as many of my friends do too. Completing the construction in progress, of which Bhagavan took keen interest and daily made enquiries, I took leave of Bhagavan with no light heart to leave for Bombay. And from there, in the company of my friend B and her son, I left on a voyage to the United States of America to see the world-famed exhibition in San Francisco and New York. Looking down the vista of long years that have now elapsed since that day I decided to build my house here, I am tempted to ask, was it accident or destiny that brought Mr. Bose into the Ashram office on my very first visit on the 9th November 1937, when the Sarvadhikari asked me to go to the town for the night and I was ready to take the night train back to Madras? Had not Mr. Bose recognized me, recalled himself to my memory and offered to accommodate me in his house, I would have bidden goodbye to Sri Ramanasramam, or was it the grace of Bhagavan? Chapter 7, Sacred Spots. Purchase of Tiruchuli House. In my travels around the world, I have seen and also have heard that places associated with the great men of the several countries I journeyed through have been preserved, in some instances as national memorials, and that these countries have honored their great men in other ways also. One such memorial I have seen in England is to Shakespeare at Stratford-on-Avon, a visit which is a must for any visitor to that country. So also is the Lincoln Memorial in the USA. The thought of these spots dedicated to the memory of the great of their land came upon me one evening as I was sitting idly with Swami upon the parapet of the well in Ramanasramam. On inquiry, I was told that Bhagavan was born in the village of Tiruchuli in the Ramanathapuram district. But none knew who was the owner or who was in possession of the house Bhagavan was born in. It was a pity that none of Bhagavan's devotees ever thought of Bhagavan's birthplace. My restless energy made me pursue these enquiries. I resolved that the birthplace should be purchased and preserved as a memorial to Bhagavan, as I considered him the greatest among the great, and as others beside me, Indians and others, also subscribed to this view. Negotiations were therefore set on foot for the purchase of the house, and as soon as it came to be known that the house was to be purchased by a Bombay lady, the price as usual was put up. But thanks to the efforts of an old lawyer devotee, Sri Ranganathan, the price was settled at a reasonable figure and the sale put through. My friends Sri Vestonji Mahalakshmiwala and Sri Govindram Seksaria each had given as a gift to me personally sums of rupees 2,500 each, which made up the consideration for the sale. The house was in bad repair, but soon was made suitable for the purpose for which it was intended. The Sarvadhikari was in a great hurry to perform the housewarming ceremony. He approached Bhagavan, who asked him if he would do the ceremony without me, Ma F.Taleyarkhan, that is myself, who had helped to purchase the house, as I was then in Bombay. So the Sarvadhikari asked me to return to the ashram for the ceremony, and on my return, a party of about 30 of us left for Tiruchuli. On the way, I stayed at Madurai with Sri R.M. Mahadevan, then District Superintendent of Police there. He made all arrangements for our onward journey to and return from Tiruchuli. The Diwan of Ramanathapuram was present with us on the occasion of the ceremony, which was performed in a fitting manner and was enjoyed greatly by the company then present. Losing and regaining the diamond rings. A thrilling example of the pervasive grace and power to work miracles may now be cited here. I was bathing in the river Kaundinya in Tiruchuli one day along with Messrs. Anantanarayanan and was washing my luxurious long hair, vigorously cleaning it with my hands. We then returned to our residence when Mr. David McKeever, who had come with me, invited my attention to the fact that the 3 eternity diamond rings I used to wear on my finger were missing. They must have slipped in the river, which was flowing fast, full of water, besides being full of sand in the bed. I then felt that the rings must be given up as lost. I made no bones about it, although the Sarvadhikari was upset about it and made such a commotion that we could hardly eat our lunch in peace. While resting that afternoon, my bearer, who had accompanied me on the journey, came and gave me the very rings I thought were lost for good, saying that a youthful cowboy had given them to him. I called for the boy to give him a reward, but lo, he had vanished and could not be found. I felt it could be no human being who found the rings and restored them to me, and I was convinced that it must be Bhagavan himself who had done me that favour of restoring the valued rings. As was usual with me to report the day's events every day to Bhagavan, that evening too I wrote a detailed report of the incident, of the loss and restoration of the rings. I also said that it was the grace of Bhagavan that had restored my rings to me. As usual, Bhagavan read out the letter in the old hall to those present. Completing the task at Tiruchuli, we returned to the ashram. I entered the hall and prostrated before Bhagavan. The first question he asked me was of those rings. I took them out of my finger and handed them over to Bhagavan. He put them on his beautiful fingers. I was tempted to ask Bhagavan to keep the rings there, but the thought that the Ashram office would immediately claim them deterred me from yielding to this impulse. These rings were, however, stolen from my house several years later. Ramana Mandiram. On our way to Tiruchuli at Madurai, our party being a large one was accommodated in several houses. We went to see the famous Sri Meenakshi temple, and on the way the lawyer Sri Ranganathan pointed out to me the house in Chokkapanaikar street where Bhagavan had lived as a student and where he attained that illumination which turned the student Venkataraman into the later day Bhagavan Ramana. We saw the house, and again I felt the urge that this house too should be bought and preserved as a memorial to Bhagavan. And Sri Ranganathan was again helpful in arranging for the purchase, the funds for which were provided at my request by Sri Raja Reddy, a wealthy zamindar who had been my guest at the ashram and who had made a few motion picture shots of Bhagavan. This house is known as Sri Ramana Mandiram and the house at Tiruchuli as Sri Sundara Mandiram in memory and honor of Sri Sundaram Iyer, Bhagavan's father, who had worked as a private lawyer there. Patala Linga Temple. Although I had seen marks on the person of Bhagavan of insect bites suffered by him during the period before I came to the ashram, my curiosity had not been sufficiently excited to inquire how Bhagavan came by these marks for quite a long while. One day, in reply to a question put to him, Bhagavan said that they were the legacy of the days he spent at the Patala Linga shrine very early in his life here. Bhagavan desired me to see the place. I had not seen it before. He asked Nayana to take me to the Arunachaleswa temple one evening. Nayana pointed out to a part of the 1,000-pillared mandap as the place where the shrine referred to by Bhagavan was. We could hardly approach the place, so dirty it was, having been used as a public lavatory rather than as a shrine. This news saddened Bhagavan, and he remarked in a sad, soft and gentle voice, "Oh, they have no other place but this for that purpose? Do you know the place is a very sacred one and is the samadhi of a very great saint?" I felt that must be the reason for Bhagavan having chosen that spot for his austerities, and something impelled me to say, "I will do up the shrine and see that the place is put to its proper purpose." Bhagavan asked me, "Oh, will you?" And I reaffirmed my intention, although I did not know then what I had undertaken. I had not been to the south for many years and hardly knew any people, and had avoided the members of my community for the reason that I was looked down as a renegade, having given up high life for the life of a sadhu. However, I finally decided to approach Sri Kaiku Parekh, who was almost a son to me, and for this purpose left for Madras in the company of Sri Narayana Iyer, sub-registrar. I told Sri Kaiku of my problem and suddenly thought of Sri Ramnath Goenka in this connection. When I went to Sri Goenka, Dr. P. Subbarayan, then minister with the government of Madras, was with him. Cordially received, I told Sri Goenka of my mission. Sri Goenka had heard of my family, and although surprised that I should be in an ashram, offered me all help and wanted to know the probable cost. I estimated this would be about rupees 10,000. He was willing to give me the entire sum then, but as I preferred to take the money required in installments, he gave me a cheque in my name for rupees 2,500. Thanking this fine gentleman for his help and blessing him, I left that place, came to the ashram, told Bhagavan, and gave the cheque to the Sarvadhikari, who proceeded to spend it as he thought fit, nominating his own men for different purposes without consulting me, except to tell me that the money was not sufficient and asking me to provide more funds. Irritated beyond measure that I should have been overlooked in the matter of the plans he had made, I told him that he had no right to do what he had done, as the money was given to me, and that I would not thereafter hand him any money for the purpose. I had not forgotten an earlier experience of mine with the office in the matter of handing them money for any specific purpose. I was agitated with what the office had done and felt I was being exploited, and told Bhagavan that I was proceeding to Madras to see what should be done in the matter. With Bhagavan's permission, I left for Madras and met Sri Goenka, who seemed not surprised at what had happened and told me he had given the money to me to do what I liked with it. I was in a fix and told Sri Goenka that I would meet him later after deciding my course of action, and apprised my friend Sri Kaiko Parekh of my plight. My first meeting with Mr. Tarapur and his family. Sri Kaiko Parekh asked me not to worry and to be ready to accompany him that afternoon when he would take me to the right person to help me. I did not know whom or what he had in mind. I soon myself found at the gate of a residence bearing the name plate Sri Tarapur. Then I wanted to get away, as I did not like to meet the members of my community. However, it was too late for any protest, and I found myself in the portico being welcomed by Mrs. Tarapur, then Mayi, and her beautiful daughter Dina Mayi. They put me at ease at once, and I overcame the sense of uneasiness I had felt on entering their building. A sumptuous tea was laid out for us, after which Kaiko coolly asked me to hand over to Sri Tarapur the plans which at Tiruvannamalai itself I had got prepared by the Sthapati, who was engaged in the construction of the Sri Matribhuteshwara temple in the ashram. I did not then know that Sri Tarapur was himself an architect of high repute, or that he was to play a great and important part in my life thereafter, providing me home, love and care such as I have never before enjoyed, or that it was a day of destiny for me. That was how it was to be, and I looked it that it was so because of Bhagavan's grace. Sri Tarapur took the plans and asked me to meet him at his office the next day, when he put me some questions and then told me simply to leave the thing to him, saying that whatever was required would be done. When I mentioned this to Sri Goenka, he was not inclined to believe me, as he felt that the work was too small for one of the status of Sri Tarapur to undertake, and yet he wished me good luck. I wrote to Bhagavan a long letter of my good luck that Sri Tarapur had undertaken the entire responsibility of the construction of the shrine of Sri Patala Lingam. I told him also how I felt considerably relieved in that the ashram would have little to do in that matter. Of course, this irritated the Sarvadhikari considerably because his finger was not in the pie. Bhagavan, however, expressed his satisfaction with what I had arranged. I asked the office to return to me the amount given to me by Sri Goenka, as the same was given to me personally and not on behalf of the ashram. Sri Tarapur and his engineers came a week later, inspected the place and set to work on the construction of the temple. Renovating the accumulated dirt itself was something of a problem. Bhagavan evinced considerable interest as usual with him, and I reported daily to him the progress of the scheme. Experts had been engaged by Sri Tarapur on the work, and he and his family would often come to Tiruvannamalai to inspect the progress of the work and to satisfy themselves thereon. On all these occasions they never failed to pay their respects to Bhagavan. As the temple was nearing completion, I told Bhagavan that I was approaching Sri Rajaji, the governor of Bengal, to perform the opening ceremony. With Bhagavan's blessings, I wrote and Sri Rajaji readily agreed to my request. Before, however, the temple could be got ready to be opened by Sri Rajaji, he had been elevated as the Governor General of India, the first and the last Indian to occupy that exalted office, and the ashram was happy that I would not be in a position to get down that high dignitary for such a function as would gladly see me discomfited. In February 1949, Sri Rajaji, the then Governor General, wrote to tell me that he was coming to the south and gave me 3 dates to choose for the function. That came as a bit of a shock to me, and I had also a phone call for the same purpose. I was quite nonplussed, as in every such situation ran to Bhagavan, who asked me what I proposed to do. I told Bhagavan that I could not get the Governor General to open an unfinished temple, and that with Bhagavan's blessings I would request him to go over when it was ready. I sent Rajaji a telegram reading, "Cannot manage," writing letter, and followed it up with a detailed letter explaining my difficulty. Sri Tarapur evinced the greatest interest in the progress of the work and helped to expedite the work. The muhurtam for the auspicious opening of the temple was ultimately fixed on 14th May 1949. I informed Sri Rajaji accordingly that I was arranging a suitable reception to the Governor General on his arrival here. I had undertaken the task of cleaning up the 2 big tanks in the temple premises, the waters of which were stinking from the accumulated moss and dirt. I may here be permitted to digress and state what had happened a few years earlier. I was so much absorbed in my Lord that I had no other thought. Suddenly someone asked me about Arunachala temple. I had no idea of the temple, so I asked Bhagavan about this great temple. Bhagavan said, "You must go and see it," and asked dear Naina to take me. Hearing this, all the other devotees also wanted to accompany us. So one night all of us went. We went hardly half the way when a Sipai stopped Naina and started discussing with him. Somehow I felt this was something about me, so I inquired if there was any enquiry about me. Dear Naina did not want to embarrass me and said that they were taking me to be a non-Hindu, as non-Hindus were not at all allowed into the temple. Immediately I went and saw the executive officer, who understood me and took us all inside. When I went to Mother Parvati in the temple, I nearly cried and said, "Oh Ma, if you are a real mother, then see that today's insult should give me the chance to serve you in such a way that one day my name would be in this temple." I was not aware of what I was saying, and lo and behold, 5 years later I took up the Patala Lingam work, which I shall ever cherish as the great mother's answer to my prayer. A new task had come on my way now, and I set about it in a big way, rushing pumps from Polur and Vellur, and seeing to it that both the tanks received the long overdue spring cleaning. I saw to it that the entire premises of the temple was made spick and span for the function, and in this task the executive officer of the temple was of immense help. That one of the status of the Governor General of India should come down to a small place like Tiruvannamalai, and that too for the opening of a small temple which was only an adjunct to the main temple, created a stir not only in Tiruvannamalai but also in Madras. I was engaged in getting up a proper reception for Sri Rajaji, not only because of the high position he occupied, but also because he was a great friend of mine and was deeply interested in me. My trials started when at 7 p.m. one day I returned home tired to find the temple executive officer and another gentleman who was secretary to a minister of the government of Madras awaiting me to tell me that the Governor General would not be attending the function, as it was too small a function for one of his eminence to participate in, and that it had been so decided by Dr. T.S.S. Rajan, Minister of Religious Endowments with the government of Madras. That really upset me, and I ran to Bhagavan, who gave me a look of such grace as made me take heart. I realized there and then that still I would come out with flying colors. With Bhagavan's blessings, I rushed to Madras to contact the minister. I met Dr. Rajan at the secretariat. I must here say I was kept waiting for quite some time there. I was quite excited at the delay and opened the door and went in. Dr. Rajan told me that he was busy, but I said I was busier. I straightaway asked him what made him say that Sri Rajaji would not come to Tiruvannamalai for the function. Dr. Rajan said that he and Sri Rajaji were great friends, had been in jail together, and that considering his eminence, he would be advising Sri Rajaji to cancel his program. I requested him to put through a trunk call to New Delhi. He hesitated but finally given in, and in 15 minutes we contacted the military secretary, Colonel Banerjee. Even as Dr. Rajan was speaking over the phone, I snatched it from him and told the military secretary that I must speak to the Governor General himself. I was almost in tears when I heard the soft, sweet voice of Sri Rajaji over the phone telling me that nothing would stop him from keeping a promise once made and that he would come down to Tiruvannamalai for the function, whomsoever objected to it. He told me not to cry and asked me whether I felt happy with his assurance. I was indeed happy, more happy than I could express, and put the phone down. I left the minister's room abruptly, not bothering to take leave of a man who had so crudely let his small vanity come in my way. The arrangements at Tiruvannamalai were vigorously pushed through. I saw to it personally that all the stations on the railway line from Madras to Tiruvannamalai received a long overdue coat of whitewash, and that the houses lining the streets of the town of Tiruvannamalai along which Rajaji was to pass were also whitewashed and gaily decorated. The town of Tiruvannamalai was also brilliantly lit up so that Sri Rajaji could have some idea of the reception planned for him from his special train itself. In all this work, Sri Dorairaj Collector and Mr. Harvey, the Superintendent of Police, were of great help to me. Sri M. Bhaktavasalam, then a minister in the government of Madras, and all the members of his family whom I had invited came on the eve of this function with a wagon load of furniture and accessories necessary for the reception. That evening I had a special puja performed at the shrine of the mother, praying for her blessings for the success of the function. The Governor General's special train steamed in at 9 p.m. bearing the Governor General, as also the Governor of Madras, the Maharaja of Bhavanagar and the Maharani. Sri Rajaji sent me a message asking me to call on him early on the morning of the 14th. When I met him, he handed me a message from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel and his daughter Maniben had sent me through him, and which they had handed to him as he was leaving Rashtrapati Bhavan. Sri Rajaji drove in an open car of Sri Tarapur's to the well-decorated temple where they performed the opening of the newly constructed shrine of Sri Patala Lingam. On entering, he asked Sri Tarapur to put up a plate in English and Tamil to commemorate the occasion, which was done subsequently. He went down the steps and graciously prostrated to the lingam there. Going round the tower, he admired the figure of Shiva on it. Thereafter he came to the artistically decorated rostrum put up in front of the shrine, where after my welcome speech he spoke. Sri Rajaji made it a point to mention that I, who hailed from Bombay, had now become one of Tamil Nadu by adoption. After the function, the Maharaja and Maharani of Bhavanagar left for the ashram for darshan of Bhagavan, and Sri Rajaji drove back to the train. After lunch, Sri Rajaji bade us goodbye and the train left for Bangalore. Not, however, before he had effected a reconciliation between Dr. Rajan and me.